Are you looking for the best budget backpacking tents? In this video we will look at some of the 5 best tents on the market. Before we get started with our video, we have included links in the description, so make sure you check those out to see which one is in your budget range. Starting at number 1. Kelty Discovery Trail. If you're new to backpacking, it would be hard to go wrong with the Kelty Discovery Trail. It's very affordable and is fairly lightweight given its spacious interior. 2 average-sized men would fit comfortably in this tent. It's also a breeze to set up. With most backpacking tents, you insert a pole into a metal grommet at one corner and then bend the pole until you can insert the other end into the grommet kitty corner from it. Inevitably you end up doing this a couple of times as the pole slips out of one or the other grommets. Instead of grommets, the Kelty Discovery Trail has nylon webbing pouches at each corner, preventing the poles from slipping out as you set up your tent. I also appreciated that the corners of the body of the tent were color-coded with the fly, making it significantly easier to line up than it would have otherwise been. While the Kelty Discovery Trail 2 lacks the second door that you would expect with a 2-person tent, it did have the rest of the full suite of features I would expect: roomy vestibule, guy lines with extra stakes, vents along the rainfly, and pockets for storage in the interior. Consider purchasing the Kelty Discovery Trail footprint to accompany this tent, as it did pick up a couple of very small holes during the abrasion test. Finally, the Kelty Discovery Trail 2 weighed just under 5 pounds during testing. At number 2. ALPS Mountaineering Lynx. If you're purchasing your first ever backpacking tent, it might come as a surprise to find out how little space some manufacturers think you need for 2 people. More often than not, 2-person tents are actually pretty cramped for 2 people, even if the people in question are on the smaller side. But that's not the case for the ALPS Mountaineering Lynx. At 90 inches long for the 2-person version of the tent, it can accommodate even the tallest individuals, and at 60 inches wide there is plenty of space for a buffer between separate sleeping pads. It also has 2 doors, again, not a given for a 2-person tent, which means easy access to either of the 2 vestibules, and all the gear you are storing inside. In addition to being fairly large, it was also one of the easiest tents in my test to set up. While I ended up tugging or readjusting the fly on several to achieve the taut profile you'll want to ensure winds and rain don't unnecessarily batter your tent, the ALPS Mountaineering Lynx looked nearly perfect from the moment I buckled in the rainfly. Like with other tents in this story, the relative fragility of the floor means that you should both purchase and use its matching footprint, which in this case pushes the weight well over 6 pounds. In addition to failing the abrasion test, there is a seam running along the bottom of the Lynx, also is true of the Sierra Design's Lost Coast. While this is protected with a seam sealing tape, it represents a potential failure point and may need to be re-seam sealed or taped before the rainfly, given the comparative amount of abrasion it's likely to experience. At number 3. Marmot Fortress. Our budget pick for 4-season tents was the Marmot Fortress, which, while more expensive than other tents on this list, is still considerably less expensive than a standard winter tent. If you're outfitting yourself for treks that could see snow, the Marmot Fortress provides plenty of protection for entry-level winter adventuring at a cost that won't set you back on rent. One thing to note about this tent is that it was difficult to achieve a taut structure, even after fiddling extensively with the complicated tensioner system at the pole ends. While the Marmot Fortress does come with an adequate number of guy lines, unusually, these must be pre-assembled before heading out. Individuals who choose this tent should stay below the tree line on their initial excursions until they are practiced at staking out and guy lining this tent to achieve a storm-worthy visage. At number 4. Marmot Catalyst. The Marmot Catalyst has a number of extra features that elevate it beyond a budget tent: multiple storage pockets for each person, 2 doors with different tieback options, and included footprint, while still coming in at a budget, if slightly higher, price point. It also proved more durable than other budget models during testing, and it was one of only 2 tents I looked at to withstand the floor abrasion test without developing holes. If you consistently use the footprint with this tent, it should last for many years. I tested the 3-person version of this tent, which weighed, with the included footprint, in at over 7.5 pounds, over a pound more than its claimed weight. Another issue with this tent is the lack of vents, which may trap moist air inside. That means that on cold nights, when the temperature on the inside of the tent is significantly warmer than on the outside, you can expect significant condensation to form. When possible, leave both doors partially open at night to maximize airflow and prevent condensation. At number 5. Sierra Design's Lost Coast. One of the biggest downsides to budget backpacking tents is that they are significantly heavier than higher-end models. The Sierra Design's Lost Coast tent was not only the lightest model I looked at for this test, although its claimed weight did not quite equal its measured weight, but it was also one of the least expensive. Part of the low weight of the Sierra Design's Lost Coast is that it's simply a smaller tent than others out there. Its 50 inches of width in the interior can fit 2 of the best backpacking sleeping pads, but not much else. If you're going to share this tent, make sure it's with someone you don't mind cuddling with. While setting up the Sierra Design's Lost Coast was straightforward, there were a few small design issues. Unlike other tents in this test, the top clip was only large enough to hold onto one of the cross poles. More concerning was the coverage of the rainfly. When I first cinched down straps at the 4 corners of the tent, I noticed that there was mesh visible along the back and one of the sides. Carefully adjusting the rainfly so that the tensioners were evenly distributed on all sides fixed the problem, but the shorter rainfly here means you'll want to take care if you are setting up in or expecting inclement conditions. Finally, given the results of the abrasion test, you'll likely want to spend a few extra dollars on the Lost Coast 2 footprint if you plan to camp in the desert or on rocky surfaces.